The stars stretched like silver dust outside the wide observation window of the UHS Vanguard. The ship moved through the dark sea of space with steady grace, its engines glowing blue against the endless night. Inside, humans and aliens worked side by side, two species bound by curiosity, duty, and uneasy respect. Commander Ryan Holt stood at the control deck, leaning slightly against the console. He had that look that came before trouble, a mix of boredom and mischief. His short brown hair was messy, and his flight jacket had a burn mark from a plasma torch incident he'd caused last week. The crew called him reckless. The aliens called him unpredictable. Holt thought both were compliments. Across the deck stood Talara of the Zalari. She was tall and graceful, with silver skin that shimmered faintly under the white lights. Her eyes were pale blue, almost like crystal, and her expression rarely changed. The Zalari were a logical people. They didn't smile, didn't laugh, and didn't understand why humans did. Talara was here as the Zalari liaison officer, a symbol of unity between their worlds. Holt and Talara had been working together for 3 months, and they had argued almost every single day. "You didn't follow the protocol," Talara said without looking up from her tablet. Her voice was calm but sharp. "Protocol's for people who don't have instinct," Holt replied, spinning in his chair. "Instinct is unreliable. It saved my life more than once." She finally looked at him, her blue eyes unblinking. "Statistically, luck is not a strategy," Holt grinned. "And yet here I am, alive, charming, and statistically annoying." If Talara had been human, she might have rolled her eyes. Instead, she just returned to her data. Holt laughed quietly to himself. He wasn't sure if he was teasing her because she was so serious, or because he liked the tiny flicker of confusion she showed whenever he joked. Later that shift, the Vanguard approached an ion storm. The bridge lights dimmed and the ship trembled under the rising static charge. The Zalari scientist advised immediate retreat, but Holt disagreed. "We can pass through it," he said. "If we time the jump between the lightning surges, we can reach the other side in half the time." Captain Rhodes raised an eyebrow. "That storm could fry our navigation array." "You sure you can handle it?" Holt smirked. "Sure? Never. But I'm good at improvising." Talara stepped forward. "Captain, with respect, this plan defies all risk assessment parameters. The probability of failure exceeds 70%, which means there's still 30%, Holt said, already strapping into the pilot seat. The captain sighed. "You've got 5 minutes. If we lose guidance, I'm pulling you out." The storm hit like a living thing. Bolts of electric light danced across the hull, and the air filled with the deep hum of magnetic interference. The ship's instruments flickered, then went dark. "Navigation offline," shouted the helmsman. Holt's hands flew across the manual controls, switching to visual guidance. "Hold her steady," Talara watched in disbelief. Humans couldn't navigate blind through an ion storm. It was madness, yet Holt's eyes stayed fixed on the viewport, reading the shifting colors and movements like a painter studying brushstrokes. "Adjust thrusters to 30% port side," he said. "We're riding the magnetic wave." "The sensors cannot confirm your trajectory," Talara warned. "I don't need them," Holt replied. "I can feel it." For a moment the storm swallowed them whole. Light flashed. The ship shook violently. Then silence. The view cleared and the stars returned. Applause broke out across the deck. Holt exhaled, grinning. "See? Instinct, 1, probability, 0. Even Talara looked at him longer than usual. "That was impressive," she admitted quietly. "Was that a compliment?" "It was an observation." "Close enough." That night, the Vanguard's crew celebrated in the common bay. Music played softly as humans and aliens shared stories and drinks. Talara stood by the viewport watching the stars, clearly out of place. Holt approached with 2 cups of synthetic coffee. "You looked like you needed this." She turned her head slightly. "Caffeine disrupts Zalari neural balance." He took a sip from 1 cup. "Then I'll drink both." Talara studied him, her expression unreadable. "You risked your life today." "For what?" "For adventure," he said easily. Adventure is a human word for unnecessary danger, and logic is a Zalari word for missing all the fun. Her eyes softened, just barely. "Fun, another human mystery," Holt smiled. "You know, I think you secretly enjoy arguing with me." "I assure you I do not." He leaned closer, teasingly. "You're in love with me." Her head tilted, and for the first time the corners of her lips curved ever so slightly. What gave me away? Holt froze. He hadn't expected that answer. For a heartbeat they just looked at each other. Human emotion meeting alien calm, something unspoken passing between them. Then she turned and walked away, leaving him with his mouth half open and his heart racing. The next day, the Vanguard was running diagnostics outside the storm's range. Holt and Talara were assigned to repair an external hull fracture, a simple task but one that required a two-person maintenance pod. The pod detached smoothly, gliding across the ship's silver hull. Inside, space stretched infinite and silent beyond the glass. "Let's get this over with," Talara said as she secured her toolkit. "Don't sound too excited," Holt said, fastening his harness. "You might start smiling again." That was not a smile. It was close enough. As they worked, small fragments of debris from the ion storm drifted past, glowing particles like frozen lightning. Holt couldn't help admiring the beauty of it. "You ever wonder," he said quietly, "why humans take risks? Why we laugh, cry, or fall in love even when it hurts?" "I have wondered," Talara said. "It seems inefficient." "It is," he admitted. "But it's also what makes life worth it. We feel things. That's how we find meaning." "Meaning," she repeated softly as if testing the word. Suddenly the pod jolted. The debris field had shifted and a sharp impact shook them hard. "Hull breach in Sector 6, Holt called out. "Shut the valve!" Talara moved fast, sealing the fracture with a thermal patch. The pod systems flickered and went dark. "Power's down." "Backup systems?" Holt asked. "Offline," she replied. "We have minimal life support. Communications are non-functional." Holt floated for a moment in silence, staring at the black expanse outside. "So we're stuck." "Yes," Talara said calmly. "Until the Vanguard notices our absence and locates us." "How long will that take?" She checked the readings. "Approximately 6 hours. Possibly more." Holt leaned back, trying to stay calm. "Well, could be worse." "Explain how." "We could be stuck here without company." Talara gave him a long look. "You consider my presence comforting?" "Let's say." Fascinating hours passed. The pod floated through the silent dark. Holt hummed a tune, soft and low. Talara listened, curious. "What is that?" she asked. "An old Earth song," he said. "Helps me think." "It is inefficient." "Yeah," he said with a smile. "But it's beautiful." She was quiet for a long time. "Beauty, another human concept I do not understand." "It's simple," he said. "It's when something makes you feel alive, even if it doesn't make sense." Talara looked out the window at the glowing trails of light. "Perhaps. This view is beautiful." Holt looked at her, surprised. "Careful. You keep saying things like that and people will think you have emotions." She turned to him, her expression softening again. "Perhaps. I do." Before Holt could answer, the emergency lights dimmed further. Their oxygen level began to drop. Talara calculated quickly. "At this rate, we have 4 hours of breathable air remaining." "Then we better make those hours count," Holt said, forcing a grin. "Any chance you have a backup plan hidden in that logical brain of yours?" "I am analyzing options." "Well, while you analyze, I'll improvise." He moved toward the control panel, opening the side circuit. Sparks flew as he tried to reroute power from the thruster array. Talara watched him in silence, torn between admiration and disbelief. "You are risking electrocution," she said. "Story of my life." Despite the danger, she joined him, using her tools to stabilize the current flow. Their hands brushed once and both of them froze. The contact was brief but electric in its own way. No shock, no pain, just a strange warmth that neither could explain. Finally, the lights flickered back to life, weak but steady. "Nice work," Holt said. "It was a joint effort," Talara replied. "See, you're learning teamwork. Pretty soon you'll be cracking jokes." She tilted her head slightly. "Would that make me human?" He smiled. "No, it'd just make you you." The silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. Outside, the stars drifted by slowly, and the two of them sat side by side in the dim light. For the first time, Talara spoke without calculation. "Commander Holt, when you said I was in love with you, why did you say that?" He chuckled softly. "Honestly, I was teasing you. I didn't think you'd answer like that. And if it were true," his smile faded a little, "then I'd say the universe has a strange sense of humor." She looked at him for a long moment. "Humor? Another thing I am beginning to understand. The comm light blinked weakly. A faint signal from the Vanguard. Holt grinned. Looks like they're coming for us. Talara nodded, but her gaze stayed on him. Perhaps. Not all instincts are reckless. And maybe not all logic is boring, he said softly. Outside, the Vanguard's lights appeared in the distance, a small, bright promise against the darkness. As the pod drifted toward rescue, Holt and Talara sat quietly, their worlds no longer so far apart. Neither spoke again. The maintenance pod floated silently, the dark void of space pressing against its glass walls. The lights of the Vanguard glimmered faintly in the distance, too far to bring any real comfort. Inside, Commander Ryan Holt and Talara worked side by side, their movements careful but quiet. The hum of the pod's backup systems was the only sound, a fragile rhythm in the immense silence. Talara studied the control panel, her long fingers moving with precision. Power levels remain unstable, she said. If we do not reroute the energy from the auxiliary thrusters, our position will drift indefinitely. Her voice was calm, but Holt could see a tension in her shoulders he had not noticed before. I've got an idea, Holt said, leaning over the panel. We can use the emergency plasma conduits. If I rewire the stabilizers, we can create a temporary propulsion field. He glanced at her, a mischievous spark in his eyes. It's risky, though. Could fry the circuits, or worse. Talara's eyes narrowed. It is a highly inefficient plan. Holt laughed softly. Yeah, but sometimes inefficient works best. She hesitated, then nodded. Very well. I will assist. They worked together, moving with a rhythm that surprised both of them. Holt guided her hands to reroute a conduit, and she calculated the energy flow with astonishing speed. Sparks flew. The metal hissed, and for a moment the pod lurched violently, tossing them against the walls. Holt caught her arm instinctively, their hands brushing again. This time neither let go. Careful, she said, her voice quieter than usual. You are reckless, and then you are. Learning to improvise, Holt teased, though his smile softened. She did not respond immediately. Instead, she focused on the panel, then murmured, Perhaps improvisation is not entirely illogical. The words made Holt pause. He liked seeing her human side, even a little, without her trying to hide it. Outside, the stars stretched infinitely, but inside the pod, a tiny universe of their own had begun to form. Minutes passed in tense silence, interrupted only by the occasional sparks and low hum of the systems. Holt noticed how her eyes lingered on his hands as they worked. He realized she was observing not just the mechanics of his movements, but the subtle gestures, the instinctive decisions that humans made without thought. Finally, the makeshift propulsion system engaged. The pod shifted, moving slowly toward the approaching Vanguard. Holt exhaled, relief flooding him. We did it, he said. Yes, Talara replied, though her voice lacked the detachment it usually held. We did it together. Holt looked at her, his grin returning. Teamwork, huh? Maybe there's hope for you yet. She turned her gaze back to the viewport. Perhaps there is hope for both of us. The pod's movement was steady now, but the oxygen level remained critical. Holt floated to the small console, checking their remaining supply. We're not out of danger yet. 4 hours of air, maybe less if we exert ourselves too much. Talara nodded. I will monitor our exertion carefully. We cannot afford mistakes. Holt leaned back, watching her. You know, for someone who claims emotions are irrelevant, you've been showing a lot of something. Admiration? Concern? Her lips twitched slightly. That is irrelevant. Uh-huh, he said, smiling knowingly. But I can see it anyway. There was a long pause. Then softly she said, Perhaps I am beginning to understand them. Emotions, not fully, but in fragments. Holt's heart skipped. Fragments are a start. The pod drifted closer to the Vanguard, but space has a way of testing even the best prepared crews. A rogue gravitational anomaly appeared, a twisting, shimmering distortion in the void that pulled at the pod like a predator. Holt felt the controls strain under the force. We need to stabilize now, he said, gripping the panel. If we lose trajectory, we'll be trapped in that field. Talara worked rapidly beside him, her fingers flying over the instruments. I will amplify the thruster output, but the strain may cause overload. Are you prepared for that possibility? Holt glanced at her. Prepared? Nah, but I'm trusting you. The pod trembled violently. The energy conduit sparked, and the walls shivered with pressure. Holt braced himself against the seat. Talara's hands moved with almost hypnotic precision, rerouting power and calculating angles faster than any human mind could. Her concentration was absolute, and yet Holt could sense her heartbeat, or at least the closest equivalent she had. Almost. There, she murmured. The pod lurched, twisted, then stabilized. Holt let out a whoop of relief. See? Told you humans aren't useless. Talara looked at him, her eyes bright not with calculation but something else, something that mirrored a human expression of awe. You may have been correct. Our efforts combined were effective, Holt grinned. Not just effective, legendary. They drifted the final stretch toward the Vanguard, and the docking clamps engaged with a soft thud. Relief washed over them both. Holt floated out of the harness and let himself relax for the first time in hours. Talara followed, her movements precise but slower now, as if drained by both effort and emotion. Inside the ship, the medbay awaited. Holt slumped onto the bed, exhausted, while Talara monitored his vitals. You pushed yourself dangerously, she said. I live dangerously, he replied with a weak grin. You are illogical, she said, almost softly, and yet effective, Holt countered. She looked at him long, studying him in silence. Then quietly she said, You are fascinating, Commander Holt. Perhaps more than I should admit. He tilted his head, a little smile tugging at his lips. Fascinating, huh? I'll take that as a compliment. You may, she said, her voice steady but warmer than ever. Holt laughed softly. You're learning how to speak human without even trying. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Words were unnecessary. The silence carried a weight neither of them had expected, but both understood perfectly. Days passed aboard the Vanguard, and the mission resumed. Holt and Talara worked together on minor repairs and data analysis, their partnership now stronger than before. The crew noticed the subtle changes, the way Talara smiled faintly when Holt made a joke, the way Holt seemed more patient when she explained her calculations. Humans and Zalari watched in quiet admiration. One evening, while they monitored the navigation array together, Holt spoke quietly. You know, the Zalari Council may not admit it, but I think they're learning something from us humans. Talara raised an eyebrow. And what would that be? Courage, creativity, the value of emotion, she considered this. Emotion may indeed have its uses, though I still maintain it is inefficient in many circumstances. Yeah, but the efficient path rarely makes life exciting, Holt said. Leaning closer, she glanced at him, her pale eyes reflecting the starfield outside. Perhaps. Excitement is not entirely without merit, he smiled. See, you're improving. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same console. Neither pulled away. Instead, they lingered in the touch, the silence full of unspoken words. Talara finally spoke, her voice low and steady. Commander Holt, if this connection, this bond we have, is true, is it acceptable? Holt's heart thumped. It's not only acceptable, it's amazing. You're amazing. Her gaze softened, and for the first time she allowed a full, genuine smile, a small curve of lips yet more expressive than any human gesture. Then, perhaps this is logical after all. Holt laughed softly, shaking his head. You're not logical. You're something better. Outside the observation window, the stars stretched endlessly. Inside, two beings from different worlds sat together, their hearts and minds intertwined. The Vanguard moved steadily through the void, carrying them toward unknown stars, toward new adventures. Months later, the Zalari Council would cite the mission as proof that humans were a model of ingenuity and resilience. They would debate reintroducing emotional capacity to their people, citing the human example. But for Holt and Talara, the lesson was simpler. Sometimes, the heart and mind together could achieve what neither alone could imagine. And in that quiet, drifting pod of space, the first true bond between a human and a Zalari officer had begun. Fragile, daring, and infinitely beautiful. They sat in silence for a long while, watching the stars, letting the weight of their journey sink in. No words were necessary. The story of what they had endured, what they had discovered about each other, and what they had become together, spoke louder than any calculation or plan. And as the Vanguard sailed onward, two very different beings learned that love, courage, and trust were not weaknesses. They were the most human. and the most powerful forces in the universe.